I'm a firm believer that there are no stupid questions when it comes to sewing. If you need to ask it, even if it's something you think you probably should already know, then it's valid. But it's not always easy to find the answers you're looking for. So I've asked my guest, sewing author and expert dressmaking teacher, Julia Hincks, onto the podcast to talk about her new Beginner's Guide to Dressmaking book and to answer some burning questions from members of the Check Your Thread community. I definitely learned some stuff from this conversation, so stick around a few minutes and hopefully you will too. Welcome to Check Your Thread, the podcast that will help you sew more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 18 years and I'm the creator and the host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge, Me Made May. But, like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate and ecological crises, and I'm looking at the way that my lifestyle contributes to them. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. And I really hope you'll join me in this journey. Hello, lovely one. How are you doing today? Very well, I hope. So I'm up to the wire with getting this episode out today, so I'm just going to blast through the intro a bit. No new patrons to thank this week, but I would very much like to thank the patrons and listeners who sent in their not stupid sewing questions for Julia to answer this week. And of course, I want to thank Julia for taking the time to answer them so expertly. If you want in on the Patreon community that supports the making of this podcast, please head to patreon.com/checkyourthread. So let's get stuck in. This was a lovely episode to record and super nice to have my friend Julia back on the podcast after ages. Heads up, there's one small swearsy at the beginning of this conversation, so skip a couple of minutes if that's a problem for you. Another heads up, we're running a giveaway to win a signed copy of Julia's new book. The giveaway is open worldwide and you just have to follow Julia's House of Miss Sew account and the Check Your Thread account on Instagram. The giveaway is open until the 27th of July, so head to Instagram, one of those accounts, to see how to enter. So until next week, when we have another return guest who never sits still for a minute. In fact, it's amazing that he gets any sewing done at all. Take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, and take care of those in the wider global community who need and deserve our help. Do head to the show notes on checkyourthread.com. This is episode 233 for links to everything discussed in this episode, and enjoy. I do a soft intro these days.
Okay.
None of this hard, as if I've not been talking to you already. So you're cycling 20 miles today because you didn't do any yesterday?
No, I did do just some cycling yesterday. I did 10 miles up to Devil's Dyke and back before I went to work.
Amazing.
And yeah, I got up at 6, got on my bike. It was a lot of effort, but it was good. I felt really smug afterwards. And then after work, I cycled 15 miles to Rottingdean and back with a little stop in the pub for a cheeky pint.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
I am raising money for Cancer Research UK, and yeah, I've got to cycle 300 miles in July, so can spread it out over July. But I'm feeling keen and I'm feeling motivated, so I'm going to try and get as much cycling done early so that by the end of the month, when I've had enough and everything fucking hurts, I will just have done it all. So, yes.
I think that's a good idea as well, because you don't know, like, something may come up.
Exactly.
You may suddenly get busy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So 47 miles done, hopefully another 20 today. So yeah, today is day 3. So that's not
like
bad.
6 of it. That's amazing. Okay, well maybe you could give me the link and I can put it in
Sure.
the show.
Yeah,
notes
definitely.
Wanted to support your endeavour to support cancer research. Amazing.
Thank you very much.
So I know who you are. And people who've been listening to the podcast from the beginning probably know who you are. But for everybody else who has not had the pleasure, can you tell us who you are, where you are, and what fills your days?
Well, I am Julia Hincks and I'm in Brighton, well, specifically Portslade, and not too far away from where you are.
I'm guessing maybe, what are we going to say, maybe 500 metres?
Possibly, yes. Very, 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 very close to you. And what fills my days? Well, I am a teacher and I teach dressmaking classes weekly. I run sewing weekends. I do one-to-one classes, and I also run workshops on dressmaking, cover stitch machines, overlockers. I have written some books. I'm going to talk more about the books, I think, in a bit. But yes, I've written a few sewing books. The first 2 are quite niche. But the third book, I've gone a bit more mainstream, and we're going to talk about that later. I also work at Fabric Godmother. I am their operations manager, so I organise the warehouse team and I make sure that the orders go out on time, we get everything done, keep everything tidy. Yes.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I'm a very busy person. I think I work too much, and I would quite like to give up one of the jobs.
Okay, well, we can discuss that later. But yeah. Okay, so massive congratulations on your new book. I am so excited for you. It looks so good. So can you tell us about it, who it's for and what it offers?
Okay. It is a beginner's guide to dressmaking, and it has 8 projects inside. I'm going to just have a little quick look in it in case I forget to say something.
And I've got mine here as well.
Yay! So yes, it has pattern sheets inside. So there's 2 double-sided pattern sheets inside which have all the patterns for all the projects, apart from project 1, which is a pattern-free skirt. So it's just a super simple rectangle elasticated waistband, couple of seams. But yes, the pattern sheets go from sizes UK 6 to 30. The idea is that someone who has only just got familiar with using their sewing machine but wants to get into making clothes could pick it up and follow the instructions and make some garments. So you have to trace off the patterns, but you know when you get like the Burden magazine or the Fibre Me magazine and everything is like laid on top of each other and it's a complete like nightmare of like, where do I start? What do I do? I didn't want that. So I've tried to separate everything out on the sheet. So it should be like super easy to find the bits that you need and to trace them.
Amazing.
And the idea is that each project teaches you a new technique. So it sort of introduces the technique and then you make the project. And so it sort of builds your confidence and builds your skills as you work your way through the book.
Amazing. So the book is structured from easy to slightly more difficult as it goes throughout. So how did you decide what projects to include and what are your favourites?
Well, I initially kind of thought, like, how would I organise my dressmaking classes? So I would normally teach sort of techniques like seams and hems, and then pocket techniques and maybe zips, and then sort of darts and gathering and things like that. So I thought, well, what would be the kind of series of techniques that you would add per project to kind of introduce something new but not make it too complicated. So that was sort of like the starting point. So the first project is a pattern-free skirt. So you're just going to be making some seams, hem at the bottom, and then the waistband is sort of formed by turning over the top and then putting in elastic. So really straightforward to begin with. There is an inseam pocket pattern, so you can add that if you want to. You can kind of look further in the book and think, oh, I'll put the pocket in the next time I make that skirt. And then project number 2 is a top. So that's just a really simple top, and that teaches you how to put a facing onto a neckline, how to sort of understitch, stitch in the ditch to fasten the seam allowances. And then it kind of progresses from there. So there's some different pockets. So I mean, I've been basically making these projects on repeat, sort of as part of the kind of process of trying to test them. And then now I just think I'm just going to be making these projects and just adapting them and amending them and adding bits to them. So in terms of like my favourite one, I mean, I've made a lot of there's a vest project in the book, and that shows you how to sew a dart and how to add binding around a neckline.
So when we're saying vest, are we talking UK vest, US vest? What are we saying vest?
A vest as in like this kind of top, like a top without sleeves.
Right, so like a tank?
You could call it a tank, yeah.
I mean, I'd go with vest, but then
okay.
UK.
So yeah, vest/tank. Okay, so it's basically the shape of what I'm wearing. So, but this is the vest from the book that I'm wearing, but I have added a button stand, and I'm going to do a little blog post on how to do that, how to add a button stand to the vest/tank. So I've made that pattern quite a lot. There's some shorts with the pockets. I've made those a lot. You can turn them into trousers. I've made the trousers a lot. And then the top project at the beginning can be combined with there's a skirt with hip pockets, and you can join them together to make a dress.
Very cool.
Everything kind of works together. Well, the issue was space on the pattern sheets to try and keep things simple. So everything had to, like work together. So the top pattern has the same basic shape that then becomes the robe pattern. And then that also, the top is part of the dress that's at the end. The waistband for the shorts is the same as the waistband for the trousers and for the dress and for the other skirt.
Oh, this is cool.
Everything kind of had to work together.
It's almost like you planned this out.
Honestly, yeah. But what happened when I sent it all to my editor for her to lay it out into the book, she then sent me back a massive file that she called Overmatter.
Ooh.
I didn't even know that was a thing. But apparently I'd pretty much written 2 books, and
okay, well that's handy.
They couldn't fit it all in. So there's some things which have become, which are going to become like blog posts. Search Press, who are the publishers, they have this kind of resources website that's called the Bookmarked Hub. So on the Bookmarked Hub, there are some additional resources to kind of take your projects a bit further. So once you get to the end and you think, I want to make that dress that she's wearing in that picture, then you can follow the blog posts and get there. So once you get to the end of the book, I don't know if you looked in the book, it's got this section at the end called Moving On.
Yes, I saw it. I love it.
So in the Moving On section, I've done things like shirring, buttons and buttonholes. There's a dressing gown. There's a dress which is made from the vest and some gathered panel. So on the Bookmarked Hub, there will be some posts, some information about how you can achieve those items that are in the Moving On section. And what isn't on the Bookmarked website will be on my own website. So everything will be out there somewhere.
And we'll put links to all of that in the show notes. Amazing. But this isn't the only book you've written, is it?
No.
As you attested to before. So it's kind of like, in a way, I kind of feel like this book is filling in a gap in the ones that you've written so far, isn't it? So what are your other books and how did this one come to be?
Okay. The first book I wrote is called The Overlocker Technique Manual. That was published in 2014. That's my first book.
That's your firstborn?
Yes. And after that, I don't know, you feel like I'm never going to go through that process again. It was very painful. Like
childbirth.
And then you forget the pain and then you just think about, but it was so nice. And I just achieved this thing. And isn't it lovely? And I'm so proud. And then I'll do it again. So the Overlocker Technique Manual is, well, as it says, it kind of takes you through everything that you can do on an overlocker. It's got lots and lots of pictures of different techniques and examples and things that you can do. It's apparently one of Search Press's best-selling books.
Yeah, it is.
It's been translated into like 5 or 6 different languages, so you can buy it in French, Dutch, Spanish, Italian, German. You can get it in American. I honestly had no idea it was going to be that popular. If I had, I might have perhaps looked at the contract more carefully. But anyway, that aside, Search Press then contacted me in, 2019, I think, and said, you wrote this book for us. Do you want to write another one? And I was like, yeah, brilliant. So I thought I'd go more niche. And then I wrote the Cover Stitch Technique Manual, which is all about cover stitch machines. So a lot of people don't know what cover stitch machines are, but they are, I guess, predominantly they're used for hemming stretch fabrics. So if you were to look at the bottom of your T-shirt or the sleeves hems of your T-shirts, then you would see what looks like a twin needle stitching on the top and overlocking underneath, but it's done on a cover stitch machine. So that's what my second book is all about. It's a bit more than hemming though, because you can use it, you can put binding on with it, you can do lots of fancy top stitching, you can do a chain stitch on that machine, and you can use that for decorative things. So yes, that book covers everything. And then in 2024, Search Press contacted me again and said, how do you fancy writing another book? And by that time, I'd forgotten the pain of the second book again. And I just remembered the joy and thought, I'll do this again. And actually they contacted me at a really good time, because I just kind of reached the end of something and was wanting a new project. You know, when you get to that point in life, you're like, I'm ready for a challenge and something new. So it was like a really ideal time to get in touch. And they have put together a series of the beginner's guide to. So they'd already done the beginner's guide to crochet and the beginner's guide to knitting, and then I think they've got plenty of other ones as well, like macrame, machine sewing. So they were looking for authors to plug the gaps and write the next ones for their series. So I was like, absolutely, definitely, yes. I want to do this. So yeah, I feel like I've gone back to basics, right back to basics. And it's actually become a really useful tool for my dressmaking classes, because I have people start my dressmaking classes and they say, like they turn up day one and they brought like a pattern with them that's really complicated, or it's completely the wrong size, because they're like, well, I'm a UK size 14, so I bought this pattern. And I'm like, unfortunately, their sizing is not the same. So I've been able to say, oh, well, there's a shorts project in my book that's really simple. Why don't we start with that? So I think it's going to be really useful for me, for my teaching, but also really useful for everybody who sews, because it's a good resource for different techniques, and it's got lots of really simple projects, but you can adapt those simple projects.
So, as you have just explained, you are both a sewing book author and a sewing teacher.
Indeed.
So, if someone who's maybe craftily inclined but new to dressmaking and they'd like to start making their own clothes, would you recommend using a book, like a book, or attending a class? Like, what do you think are the pros and cons of both approaches?
I guess probably you'd want to start with a book to see if you liked it, because you might start it and think, oh, I don't actually like doing this at all. And then, if you kind of gone all in with booking a class, you might think, well, that was quite expensive and I really didn't like the class. So I guess there's sort of pros and cons to both, isn't there? I mean, I absolutely would recommend getting my book, because it will take you right from the beginning and get you started. But there's certain things I think about attending classes which you can't get from just looking in a book or looking online and watching a video online. I mean, particularly when it comes to things like fitting, it's quite difficult to do that on your own. You might have someone at home that you can say, oh, can you help me? Can you pin there for me? Can you do this? But likely the person that you're living with at home has no idea what you're talking about.
No, or can even use a pin, I'm sure.
Or can even use a pin. When you say pinning, what do you mean?
Train them up before you can even begin, yeah.
So that can be quite hard to do that kind of thing. But also, what I find in my classes is I've got a real good mix of people who are beginners through to people who've been coming for years, that just like the social aspect of it. And it's become like a really lovely community of, people want to come to the classes because it's like their therapy for the week, or it's, their time to kind of their me time sort of thing. And that's what you can't get just out of sitting at home with a book. And you'll have people that come and you're sitting there thinking, oh, how do I do this? And I don't even have to help all the time, because other people will chip in and go, well, I've made that thing and I'll do it like this. And I think the other thing is people will come with, you'll get lots of pattern ideas or fabric ideas, or people will tell you where they got their fabrics from, or so there's like a whole world, like other resource out there of the people that come to the classes. So I think that's really good. But obviously the issue with classes for some people is the cost. They're not always cheap. And then the time, trying to find something that's...
Yeah, or getting there if you don't have a car.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, well, I don't have my own equipment. Have they got equipment to use? Or like, is it accessible on the bus or the train? So yeah, those things can be a bit of an issue. But yeah, so I guess I think you should do both. You should buy my book and then come to my classes.
Well, we don't all live near you. Well, I do. So the book is still an option. So something that I think that is really good, I mean, you just explained it all so well, but something that I think that is really good about in-person sewing classes is that they're great for the ability to ask questions, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like, you might not necessarily quite know what you're asking, so you don't know like the term to type in, to get an answer if you're, on YouTube or whatever. But I do think that from my experience of teaching classes, often some students get a little bit shy, don't they, about asking things because they think, oh, I should know this, or this is a stupid question.
Yeah, definitely being able to ask questions and have someone there, not just a teacher, but there might be other people in the room that can offer the help as well, that, people have got experience of making that same project or having done that same technique. So
yeah, for sure. And I personally feel very strongly that there is no such thing as a stupid question. Like, if you need to ask it, then it's not stupid.
Absolutely.
You have a lifetime experience as a maker and 20 years experience of teaching sewing and therefore imparting knowledge very clearly. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity for listeners and patrons of the podcast to ask some questions that they have about sewing that they didn't know where else to find the answers. So I'm going to ask you some questions submitted by listeners and patrons. Are you ready?
I think so.
So convinced. Amazing. Okay, here we go. Let's just do it.
Okay.
Right, the first one is from Debbie. Debbie asks, if I want to finish my edges with a serger / overlocker, should I do it after I've sewn the seam or should I do it to each individual pattern piece and then sew them together? What criteria should I use to determine which of those two methods to employ? Such a good question.
It is a good question. And also, I'm not sure, it's not like a kind of cut and dry yes, no, this way, that way answer. But I would say initially it depends on the fabric. So if you've got a fabric that is just fraying and unraveling like crazy, then I would just overlock all the edges to begin with and then just save the mess. So for example, I made a dressing gown out of toweling fabric. Oh my God, what a mess. So it looked like it had snowed because it was white. So that fabric, I was like, right, I'm going to just overlock all of it, contain the mess, and then sew with it.
Good idea. Maybe also for like corduroy and velvet.
Corduroy,
like
those kind of things. So things which will just kind of disintegrate quite easily or create a lot of problems for you in terms of mess. Don't really like a mess. Things that fray, I would overlock those first. If the fabric is really thick, sometimes it can be easier to do your edge finishing first, because once you've got 2 layers or more than 2 layers and you're trying to get them through your overlocker / serger, you might not be able to do it. So that would be something that I would think about.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. That's such a good one.
And then so thin fabrics, sometimes they don't like to be overlocked on the a single layer. So it's easier if you've got something a bit more substantial running through your machine. And also then the other things I thought was it kind of depends on the order of construction. So there's no point like overlocking all the way around your neckline if you're then it's going to have binding on it, or you're going to have a collar on it that's going to cover that, so if that edge is going to be finished by a different method, there's no point really overlocking it.
Yeah, it's just a waste of thread.
Yeah. So sometimes you could have edge finished everything and then realise that actually, well, I could have left that edge and I could have left that edge. Like I don't need to do the bottom until it's finished. So it does sort of depend on the type of fabric and the order of construction of things, I think.
And I guess this as well, if you're planning on doing open seams or closed seams, like I find it really hard to overlock the raw edges separately if I've already sewn the main seam. Like if I'm going to do an open seam, I prefer to overlock them separately first.
Yeah,
that's just me.
Which is a good point, because that becomes more difficult when you've got thicker fabrics. So if you've got really heavy denim and you're trying to edge finish one edge, and you're struggling to get it through the machine without it bunching up sometimes. So so that's exactly it. So depends on your construction methods and your fabric choice.
Amazing. Alrighty, so this question is from Caro. Caro says, hi Zoe. Okay, my stupid not question is whether a button-up skirt should have vertical or horizontal buttonholes. Maybe there's no technical difference. Puzzling over this has got me stuck on my current stitching project. Best wishes. And then also there's a follow-up question from Di saying, I ask myself the same question every time I'm doing buttonholes on a shirt. Also, which side do I put them on? I think I need a memorable mnemonic to help me remember. So good questions about buttonholes.
Okay, so maybe I'll answer the Di's question first, because that's probably more straightforward, and then I'll talk a bit more about the direction of your buttonholes. So one easy way for Di to remember which way to button her shirt. So women is always right over left. So you button from the right over to the left. You put the buttonholes on the right, and that's because women are always right.
Okay, but also maybe just which you prefer. Is that
well, that's one way of remembering it, but it may not be one way that everybody likes remembering it. So generally speaking, women are buttoned right over left, men are buttoned left over right, and it just kind of dates from history where women were dressed, and it was a lot easier for the person dressing the woman that the buttonholes were on the right of the body. But I always think, if I'm making something, then have a look in your wardrobe and find a shirt in your wardrobe and think, well, what side are those buttons on? Just make sure it's a garment that's yours rather than your partner's, in case your partner's is done the other way around. I think a lot of people have made the mistake of making a man's shirt and putting the buttonholes on the wrong side. I don't think, some people aren't bothered which way round they're buttoning. Some people are bothered. So anyway.
Yeah, I made the Amalfi blouse pattern recently, the sewing pattern by Mason, and what I like in the instructions for that one is like it's got like a neckband that is attached to, it's the same piece as the button stand, and then the body is gathered into the neck, and so there's a kind of like a right angle that's a little bit tricky, and in the instruction she's basically put which side went best and looks nicest, put that at the front.
I mean, that's always the other thing, isn't it? You can look at it and think, well, which side do I want it to, maybe I like the print on that edge a bit better and I want that to be wrapping over, or I've made a mark, or there's something that won't come off that bit. So I'll cover that up by buttoning over the other side. So there's always that way. Going back to Caro's question about the direction of the button holes, I kind of think, well, there's a few things that I would consider. On the waistband, you always want that to be horizontal because it's taking the strain. So you'd want to make sure that your buttonhole on the waistband was horizontal, and that's going to fasten and hold better.
That's a non-negotiable.
That's non-negotiable. Always that way. The other buttonholes, though, I would say sometimes it depends on the width of the button stand. So if you put on a button stand and it's machine stitched on both sides and you've got great big buttons, you don't want to do a horizontal buttonhole that's then going to cross your stitching line that you're then going to have to cut through. So I would do vertical buttonholes for a narrow button stand. And then the other consideration is the fit of the skirt. So if it's something that's quite fitted, you probably want a horizontal buttonhole all the way down for your button up, because that's going to just hold it better. It's going to be less gapey. It will just be a better fit that way. And then if it's like a much fuller skirt with a narrower button stand, then you would do horizontal buttonholes. So it sort of depends on, like the style of the skirt and how it's fitting.
And what about shirts and coats?
Shirts and coats, I mean, again, probably follow the same sort of rules. I think generally speaking, like on a collar stand, you would have a horizontal buttonhole. I mean, there's generally no space to do anything vertical on that anyway. And then on a shirt or a blouse, normally I would do buttonholes which run vertically. But some patterns show them done the other way. So I think, again, I'd go back to the width of the button stand. So if it's something that's got a facing underneath that's then just held with the buttonholes, then you could quite easily do horizontal buttonholes all the way down. Usually for coats, they're horizontal, and you've usually got a bit more space on the button stand. But again, it same sort of things would apply. So yeah, personal preference, style.
Nice. Very cool. Okay, here's another question from Di, whilst Di was busy asking questions. They said, my question is one that comes up every time I'm trimming and layering seam allowances at a facing, waistband, collar or cuff. Which layer should be shorter and which should be longer to help it sit nicely? And there's a follow-up question from Yana. Yana asks, do you have to trim and layer the seam allowance? So can we start with you explaining what layering the seam allowance is, in case that's a term that somebody hasn't heard?
Okay, so when you have sewn a seam on something, the instructions might say to you to trim and layer. So trimming would just be cutting a little bit off of both the seam allowances, and then layering would be cutting one a bit shorter. So some people refer to it as grading. So it might say grade the seam allowances or layer the seam allowances, but it means the same thing. So rather than having like one bulky, chunky bit, you have cut one a little bit shorter. So I mean, if you think about around a collar, you might have a collar stand and an actual collar. So you've got quite a few thicknesses of fabric. So you want to just be trimming some of them a little bit shorter than the others to try and reduce a bit of the bulk around that area.
Sometimes you can get like almost like a wedge, can't you, with seam allowances stuck in there, and it's a bit noticeable sometimes, isn't it?
So that's the idea of the layering. Which side to layer though? I always kind of look at it and think, well, which bit is going to be covered? So, for example, if I had put a facing onto a neckline, my facing is interfaced, I've sewn that on, I've then trimmed and then I've layered, and I would do the layering where I'm trimming the facing side, the one that's got the interfacing on. I'm trimming that a little bit shorter because my next step is going to be to understitch. And when I understitch, the seam allowances are pressed towards the facing. So the smaller, shorter facing seam allowance is going to be covered by the slightly longer seam allowance of the main top or whatever it is. So that's how sometimes I look at it and think, well, which one's going to be kind of enclosed once I do my understitching? So that's the one that I would trim a little bit more. And it's often the one that's interfaced, but I guess it's not always 100% true. But if you're just putting a facing on something, then quite often that is the one that's interfaced.
Because if you're understitching and you're kind of pushing all your seam allowances onto one of the sides, you don't want the one that's underneath to be the short one, because that can be sometimes a bit hard to catch, can't it?
Yeah, so you want to make sure you're going to catch all the seam allowances. So if the one that's kind of covering last is the longer one, then everything will be enclosed and everything will get sewn properly. So yeah,
nice.
How I think about
it. So Jana's question, do you have to trim and layer the seam allowances?
I mean, it depends. Like if your fabric's quite thin, sometimes it doesn't really matter. It's not important. And again, the same with the layering. So you might trim and then you might think, well, I don't really need to layer because it's quite a fine type of fabric. So no, I guess you don't have to. But sometimes
you don't have to do anything.
You don't have to do that at all. No.
Do what you want. Awesome, thank you. That's cool. Alrighty, so we've got 2 questions here from Tyler. So Tyler says, 2 not stupid questions. I love that they are really internalising this. None of my questions are stupid. I love that. Not stupid question number 1. I only have a straight stitch sewing machine. What hand stitches would you recommend for sewing knit fabric? Any other things I might need to know when hand stitching stretchy fabric? I am a confident hand stitcher. Very cool. Okay, well, let's go with that one first because the second question's on a different topic.
Okay, so the first question I was thinking, well, if you have only a straight stitch sewing machine, are you aware that there is a thread called, well, they have different names, but they're stretch threads that you can use on your sewing machine and that they stretch a little bit. So you can use a straight stitch and sew stretch fabric. So they have, I think the Gutermann one is called Mariflex. And then I can't remember, someone else has got one that's called Seraflex. They often end in
that's Metler,
flex.
There's flex some other being the key
thing. So you can get a stretch thread.
That's very cool. I've forgotten about that.
And you can sew on your sewing machine. You don't have to use a zigzag stitch with those types of stretch
you're not going to have
threads.
The pop that you might
Exactly. So that could speed things up for you. But if you want to do the hand sewing, then you could just use a zigzag stitch by hand.
Oh.
Or you could use a herringbone stitch, because both of those have, you're doing a kind of zigzaggy thing. So that allows the fabric to stretch a little bit.
Has got some stretch to it as well, hasn't it?
And then you can do a back stitch as well, because that just gives you a bit more security. So those 3, so a zigzag, a herringbone, or a back stitch, where you're kind of just reinforcing and having a bit more security. The other thing is the type of thread that you're using. I know in the kind of world of trying to be, sustainable, as is all about.
Is that the world that I live in?
The world that you live in. A lot of people think, I should use like a natural type of thread, but actually you should use a polyester thread because it has a little bit of give. So any kind of dressmaking I would always do with a polyester thread. You could use your Arpet recycled polyester thread, which is slightly better environmentally.
Just to put the cat among the pigeons, though, I am slowly transitioning over to Tencel thread, which is going to be biodegradable, but it doesn't have as much stretch as the polyester, but it has more stretch than a cotton thread. So it could be a happy medium.
I think cotton's okay for like quilting projects, but I wouldn't use it for dressmaking projects.
Controversial, not endorsed.
Okay, but also I think if you're kind of moving on to Tencel threads, what's the availability of Tencel threads and the colour range? Yes, that is the problem.
Yes, they are generally available on cones. I've been getting mine from James Tailoring. And then I siphon off some of the cones onto like empty, normal, 200-meter spools. So so yeah, and there is definitely a few smaller range of colours, but definitely for my overlocking and for basic colours like black, white, navy, colours that I use a lot like that, I go with the tencel. And then when I need a closer colour match, I go for the Arpet recycled polyester. Yeah.
Okay. So then the kind of end of that question was any other things I might need to know when hand stitching stretchy fabric. I guess we've covered about the type of thread that you're using, and I don't know, is there anything else?
I would just say maybe when you're handling
I guess
it, not to kind of stretch it out, kind of let it to.
Yeah, that, I mean, like when you use it
Yeah.
on a sewing machine, it's quite easy to sort of stretch it out of shape. So you might want to think about using some stabilizers or like stay tape, putting a bit of interfacing, particularly like round necklines or armholes, like you would do for like non-stretch fabrics as well. Just making sure that you're not going to end up with the openings kind of stretched out of shape before you
Excellent
finished.
points. Okay. Tyler's second question. For an hourglass figure, do you know any trouser and or dress patterns with woven fabric that are adjustable in the finished form around the mid area, as my weight also fluctuates throughout the day, month? Same.
Okay. I thought about those trousers, which I think you have made. Are they the Sasha Starlight Palazzo pants?
They are indeed, and they are very adjustable in their finished form.
Yes.
And I believe she's developing a skirt pattern currently as well.
Ah, okay. There's those. I mean, there's quite a lot of trouser patterns. Obviously, there's a lot of elasticated patterns. There's many elasticated projects in my book. There's some shorts, there's some trousers, there's a dress that's got an elasticated waistband. Another thing that I like to do is put elastic into the waist and then also have a drawstring and put a bit of elastic at the back of the drawstring. So like it's got the bit that looks nice that's coming out of the buttonholes for the casing, but then the bit round the back that you can't see that's enclosed in the casing is a bit of elastic, so that when you've tightened up your drawstring, it's still a bit stretchy.
Yeah, when you sit down, you can not get carved in two.
Exactly. So it just can tighten it up a little bit more, but it also has a little bit of give. So I quite like that. So there's quite a few. The Closet Core Mitchell pants have got like the D rings on the side, so you can kind of tighten them up with the D rings. Cashmerette have got this pattern called Merriam. They can be sort of adjusted a bit more at the back. And then when I was kind of thinking, what else was there? And I don't know if you use thread loop, but there was on thread loop, there's a whole list of different patterns. It's called Adjustable Waist Pants Beyond the Elastic Waist. And there's loads and loads of recommendations for different trouser patterns, which have not just the elasticated waist, but like, clever little tricks to give you a little bit more tightness or looseness.
I'd also recommend if you've got an elasticated waist pattern, maybe instead of using regular elastic, you could get that buttonhole elastic, that often is in kids' trousers.
Yeah, that's true. Then you can have a gap at the side. You can just tighten it, loosen it as you need to. Yeah. In terms of, they asked also about dresses. So I was thinking like a wrap dress or like wrap pants.
Oh, yeah.
/ trousers. So I was thinking like the Zadie is quite a good one because you can tie it tighter or looser. And then named clothing. I know I've made like a million, maybe not quite that many, but at least 5 kilo wrap dresses from named clothing, that's a pattern for stretch fabrics. But they have another one that's called, I'm going to pronounce this completely wrong, but it's called Lilja, Lilja. So it's like the kilo wrap dress, but it's for woven fabrics. So it's got the same kind of like flying suit look to it when it's open, and then you wrap the ties around you, and you can tighten them as tight as you want to. So I quite like that. Cool. And there's another nice dress by Sewing Therapy that's the tie dress. So it's quite a very loose sort of shape, and then you can tie the ties in different ways, and you can obviously tighten them as tight as you want them to be. So that's quite a good one that you could, wear out, have a big dinner, and then just loosen the ties a little bit.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm just thinking of? What I'm wearing right now, the fabric Godmother Lisi dresser blouse
yes.
as well. That's
There
got
you
a
go.
waist casing and is an hourglass shape as well.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so this question is from Fiona. Fiona says, "Love your show." I think that bit's for me. I'm listening in Australia. In the car this morning, I was listening to your recent episode about mending and also thinking about a dress I want to make in linen in a pattern with lots of pin tucks. Oh, they've said the beautiful Frux Studio garden dress. It is very beautiful. I checked it out. It's quite a fine drapey linen, so it's also shifty, and I think it will be a little tricky to sew. So perfect timing, because I'd thought, who can I ask for tips on sewing pin tucks on shifty fabric? I hope Julia can help.
Well, I think there's lots of different options, and I had a look at this pattern, and it's really lovely. But yeah, there's a lot of pin tucks,
A lot of pin
and you've
tucks.
got to get them right, because if you do, you've got to take your time and just make sure that you've marked and measured and ironed and done all of those things. I've kind of, I don't know, a bit late to the party on this one, but I've been using those friction pens, you know, the ones that iron off. And I'm like, why haven't I been using these before? I don't know. So if you've got your fabric laid out, those are really good for marking. The trouble is the iron off element. Or another,
it's a blessing and a curse.
Yes, yes. Or another pen that you know definitely will wash out, that you can mark really carefully the lines that you're going to fold on before you do your stitching. There are things that you can do to sort of stop the fabric being shifty. I don't know if you've ever tried these things with like fabrics that move a lot, Zoe. I've never done any of these things, but actually, tell a lie, I have used an iron-on wash-away stabilizer.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, so that's something. So then you can kind of iron that stabilizer to your fabric, so it's a bit more stable, obviously, and then mark your lines and then cut them, and then it's not shifting as much. And then the other thing people have suggested doing, particularly like for things like silk or fabrics like that move a lot, is to use gelatin.
What?
And so kind of put them in a solution of gelatin, let it dry, and then your fabric's just kind of non-fluid, and then sew with it and then wash them. But I've never tried that, because I've just persevered with like lots of pins and just careful taking my time, that kind of thing.
Interesting. I want somebody to try that, or who has tried that, and then let us know what they discovered.
So yes, I don't know because I looked at the picture of the pattern, but I couldn't work out whether, when I've done pin tucks before, sometimes you just pin tuck a load of fabric and then cut the pattern pieces afterwards. And I don't know if this is done in that way, or whether you just cut it out and then you mark up the pin tucks and then you sew them.
But you're right. If it's the latter, you could probably do the former, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. So I think the main thing really though is just carefully measuring and marking the lines that you're going to fold on. So you mark each of the lines that you're going to fold, you then press them, and then you sew them. And maybe if, when it comes to the sewing, quite often I use, you know, if it says the pin tucks are meant to be like 6mm from the edge, then you could use like a 1/4 inch foot, because that is 6mm, or a blind hemming foot, because you can adjust the position of the, on some of them you can, some of them you can't. But like I've got a Janome, and it's got just a generic blind hemming foot, and it's got like a kind of white guide that you can use. It's got a screw thing that you can adjust the position of the guide so that it sits along your edge, and then you can stitch in a particular place. So I use that a lot if I'm doing top stitching as well, because it just gives you it's just giving you a measurement guide. So that, or a 1/4 inch foot, depending on how far in your pin tucks are.
That's cool. Okay, right, we've got a last question here, and I love this question. This is from Sandra. Sandra says, "Hi Julia, I teach sewing at the local library and occasionally offer private lessons. I get good feedback, but I don't always see them continuing independently outside of class. Also, sometimes they have pretty big goals, corsets and fur suits, oh my. What are your best tips for instilling confidence in beginner sewists and encouraging them to take on a simple first independent project?"
Yes, I think sometimes there's no changing someone's mind. It's like, I am going to make that thing. It might be incredibly difficult and completely out of my skill set, but I'm going to do it anyway. And who cares what the outcome is? So there's some people that you can't change. I think it's about sort of managing expectations. I know that when I have people that are new to class and I'm trying to give them advice on projects, and some people are more, easily influenced than others, but try and encourage somebody to say, well, where are you at with your dressmaking? Maybe like for the next project, each new project, you only really want to introduce like one new technique or perhaps two new techniques, rather than, right, I've got no dressmaking experience, but I'm going to make a shirt with a long sleeve. So you've got to do like a cuff placket, the cuff, the collar, the buttons, the buttonholes. There's too many things all in one go, and you're going to just probably not finish your project. So I think it's like just trying to help people understand that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and that you should just start simple and just say, okay, well, even if you don't like this project, think of it as perhaps a pair of shorts that you might wear for doing the gardening or something, but you'll learn how to do a pocket, and you'll learn how to do a waistband and how to do a hem. And then once you've done that, then we can think about the next project that you might want to do. And also you're more likely to succeed in something that's straightforward and then feel confident to try something new, rather than to think, right, I'm going to make a corset.
I've so had those students as well.
Yeah.
The first thing is like, I'm making my daughter's boned prom dress. Then it's like, have you sewn anything before? No.
Yes.
And I've got this silk. And you're like, oh God.
Yeah. And some people do not want your advice.
No.
But yeah, I guess the other thing might be sort of helping people to choose like the pattern brand that they might go for, because some pattern brands are easier to follow than others. Some people's instructions are quite minimal, whereas other people might have really kind of hand-holding instructions, and then also lots of resources online. So there might be a video on how to do that particular technique, or perhaps a blog post. So being able to suggest those kind of things is quite helpful as well, because you can say, right, well, there's this project you could do, and then they've got this Facebook group that you can just type stuff in and they can help you there as well. So being able to send them off on their way, but with somewhere they can look for help sort of independently.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much for all your question answering. It's so good. I've just got a sneaky little extra thing that it's not a question, but it's a comment that was submitted by Lisa Bauer, who is a previous and regular guest on this podcast. So Lisa wanted to say that Julia was one of the first to make me feel truly welcome in the online sewing community.
Oh.
I started posting more on Instagram around the beginning of the pandemic, and then shortly after that I joined the first online sewing weekender by the Fold Line, and Julia just had a way of commenting and encouraging me that made me realise, oh, this isn't just an anonymous forum. I'm not screaming into the void. This is a real community made up of real sewing people that are actually lovely. Well, and I've been hooked on both sewing and the sewing community ever since. So I guess this is my long-winded way of saying thank you. Thank you, Julia, for making a sewist like me feel welcomed to the craft and the community through things like your book, your sewing classes, and your welcoming and authentic online presence.
Oh, lovely. That's really lovely. Oh, thank you. Because I often feel like on Instagram, you think, I want to make a comment on that person's thing, and it's like, how does it land, or have I overstepped the mark? I don't know. But that's really nice. So thank you.
Lovely. Okay, so where can people find you? Where can they follow you? How can we learn from you? And where can we find your book?
Well, you can buy signed copies from my book from my website. You can buy signed copies of all of my books on my website, which is houseofmisssew.com. You can also find information about my classes that I'm running, or where I might be doing some sewing weekends where I might be running my own things, or like events that I'm teaching at. That's all on my website as well. You can follow me on Instagram at House of Miss Sew.
Can I also mention that you've got an amazing YouTube channel with some really incredible videos? You've got such a really good, clear way of explaining techniques. So definitely check out House of Miss Sew YouTube channel, because that is a great way to people to learn from you who might not be able to attend an in-person class.
Thank you very much. You can also follow me at Julia Hincks on Instagram. I've got House of Miss Sew on Facebook, if you're on Facebook. Anything else I've forgotten Don't know.
I mean,
that's
good.
probably
I'm
where
going
you
to put
can
all
find
these
me.
links in the old show notes, obviously.
And you can, at the bottom of my website, you can sign up to my mailing list. So if you want to know about what's new, what exciting things are going on. My last mail that I sent out was all about my very exciting TV debut on Sewing Street. I know,
Woo!
Shocker. So that was that was my exciting news last time.
Who knows what the next one will be?
Yeah, who knows?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Julia. And I'm also going to put links to all the other previous episodes that you've been on as well.
Indeed,
for those who want
brilliant.
to, I want more Julia.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks for answering all those questions.
You're welcome. Lovely to chat to you today, Zoe, and hopefully you've got something nice planned for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and I'll see you at work next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!